Okay? All right. How can they preach unless they're sent? Okay? And what I'm saying is you have been sent. You have been sent. Okay? Don't think you're not sent. You are sent. I am sent. You are sent. We are supposed to go and preach. And by preach, not in the sense of what I'm doing or what your pastor does on Sunday, but it could be simple as having a conversation with somebody. Talking to them. The next verse connects real nice. And how can they preach unless they're sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. That is taken from Isaiah 52:7. And what it means is people that will come and give you good news, those are beautiful people. The message is beautiful, and it should be as if, I think oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this, we think that people are going to reject our message. We think they're going to not like what we have to tell them. And in a sense, they won't, because if we're confronting their sin, more than likely they're not going to like that. However, this is good news. A great message and beautiful feet that bring the great message, the beautiful message. Okay? So he's obviously not saying beautiful feet as in your feet should be in a sandal ad. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is the messenger is beautiful. Okay? This is a positive, good thing. Good news, not bad news. It's good news. Okay? Don't be afraid to give somebody good news. Good news. Right, Al? All right. Verse 16. But not all Israelites accepted the good news. Remember John in the very beginning. He came to those which were his own, meaning the Jewish people, but his own did not receive him. They rejected the Messiah. Over and over again, they tried to kill the Messiah. From the first time he preached to the last time when he was in Jerusalem, and they tried to kill him again. And finally they did. Not all Israelites accepted the good news. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our message? That comes from Isaiah 53:1. And he's predicting the unbelief of Israel there. Okay? In other words, this is not a surprise. This, Isaiah wrote, scholars believe, about 700 years before Christ. And this was predicted that the Messiah would come and that the Jewish people would reject him 700 years in advance. Let's go to Isaiah. It's real close to the Psalms. It's right after Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs. What's that? 66:2. No, actually it'll be Isaiah 53. With 66:2. Oh yeah. Isaiah 53. Everyone there? Verse 1. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? And now what's interesting about this is, you guys who know the Bible and know Isaiah, this is the clearest depiction of Jesus Christ in the Old Testament that you will find. Period. There are other messianic passages, but this one is the clearest. And so isn't it interesting that Paul, predicting the rejection of the Messiah, then, did I say Paul? Isaiah, predicting the rejection of the Messiah, then describes what the Messiah will do, what it will look like, what he will look like. Verse 2, he grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. So what that means is, all the Catholic pictures you saw Jesus glowing, not biblical. Okay? He had no glow to attract us to him. That's what that verse just said, in my paraphrase. Okay? So he was not glowing. His face didn't shine like the sun. except for on the Mount of Transfiguration. When he went up, he did actually shine like the sun. But when he was just walking around normally, no glow, no weird hum, no sounds coming off of him. He didn't have any frequencies. Okay, he was a normal, everyday guy. No beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. This is beginning to speak about his crucifixion and his beating. Surely he took up our infirmities, and he carried our sorrows. It's talking about us, Jesus, bearing our sin. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. Remember on the cross, they yelled out, he saved others. Let's see if he could save himself. Right? We considered him stricken by God, smitten and afflicted. But he was pierced, right? Hands and feet pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. And by his wounds we are healed. Those should have been our wounds. Those should have been our piercings. But Jesus, in our place, took it. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, this is speaking of us, like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was like a lamb led to the slaughter, and like a sheep before her shearers is silent. He did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. Who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. You remember Joseph of Arimathea lent Jesus his tomb, and that's speaking of the rich in his death. That's what that's talking about. Though he had done no violence and was no deceit in his mouth, yet it was the Lord's will to crush him, to cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of the Lord will prosper his hand. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. That's talking about the resurrection. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many. That's speaking of us. And he will bear their iniquities. That's the substitutionary atonement. Jesus took our sins in our place as a substitute. Therefore, I will give him a portion among the great. He will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death. He was numbered with the transgressors, for he bore the sins of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Hey, that is so clearly Jesus, I don't know how you can miss it. Right? Can anyone not see Jesus there?
How do they miss it?
Well, they miss it because there's a veil over their hearts. We'll get to that in Romans 11. There's a veil. When the Old Testament is preached and Jesus is preached, there's a veil.
You can still walk into a temple and hear them read that passage today, and they know, they've heard the story of Jesus on TV, wherever, a million times, and they still don't see it.
Yep. And so, you're right. And so, verse 1, before the description of the Messiah, predicts the rejection of this Messiah. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Paul quotes that in Romans 10 to show that the unbelief of Israel was prophesied and predicted long before it ever happened. 700 or so years before it was predicted. I have a friend, you guys have heard this before, some of you. I have a friend who is in Pittsburgh, and he's the head of the Jews for Jesus here in Pittsburgh. And he told me that in some places, literally, they will skip Isaiah 53, the Jewish people. They will just skip it, like it's not even there. And he was on a mission to raise money to send every Jewish household in Pittsburgh Isaiah 53. He was raising money to do that. I never found out if he ever did it or not, but interesting. All right.